Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader's Edge. I'm your host, Steve Steele, where we dive into insights and principles that will supercharge your leadership and ignite personal growth. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a leader navigating change, or a seasoned pro, this show is for you. Each episode is packed with practical strategies designed to elevate your mindset and amplify your leadership impact. So get ready for actionable tips that can actually put you into practice immediately. And a huge shout out to all of our amazing listeners. Thank you so much for your unwavering support. So let's get started and lock you into your true potential. All right, our guest today is a keynote speaker, an author, and professional illusionist who helps organizations build stronger leaders and better communicators. He has written 10 books on leadership, on communication, and personal growth, and speaks to corporations and associations across the country. Blending leadership insight with powerful illusions, Ken delivers masterful and presentations that are both memorable and practical for leaders and teams. His newest book, called Calling the President's Leadership Wisdom from Every Commander-in-Chief, draws from decades of research and travel to presidential libraries, homes, historic sites across the United States. In it, Ken reveals powerful leadership lessons, both good and bad, for every American president, and shows how those lessons apply to leaders today. So welcome from the green room, Ken Hartley. Come on in, Ken.
Hey, Steve, and hello, Leaders
There
Edge.
he is.
Hey, I am thrilled to be with you.
Wow. Oh, I'm telling you what, Ken, I'm so excited you're here. And we've got a really amazing show today. We're really going to focus on this newest book that you wrote, Calling the President's Leadership Wisdom from Every Commander-in-Chief. I absolutely love that title. And during this process, Ken, we're going to do a little challenge. I've got a little challenge for you, probably about the little way through. So, and we talked a little bit about it, but I don't think you know everything about it. So we're going to have a little challenge for you. Okay. All right.
Sounds like a winner.
Ken, let's just get started off. All right. I know a little bit about your story, but the amazing thing to this, and you can lead into it as you move along in the story, but how you came up with the title of this is so fascinating. So, Ken, just lead us into your story and where you came from and how you got where you're at and what you're doing.
I was raised in Jackson, Tennessee, and from a very young age, I wanted to be the president of the United States. Other people wanted to be superheroes, policemen, firemen. I wanted to be the president. And this actually started right after I was born, because my mother is from Independence, Missouri. My grandfather had an electric store there, and he did a lot of the electrical installation for Harry Truman's house.
That was about right?
2 blocks. Yeah, just 2 blocks from his house. Wow. And so right after I was born, a few months later, he walks over to the Truman house, and he has this little Bible right here that has my name imprinted, a little Gideon Bible, and walks over, knocks on the door, and Harry Truman answered. It was the day and age it was.
Is that right?
He said, "What can I do for you, Glenn?" He said, "Well, I just had a grandson." He said, "Well, that's a wonderful thing, Glenn." And my grandfather told me this story many times, and he handed him this Bible, and you could see Harry Truman actually signed that Bible.
Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah. So I still have this today. It's one of those treasures.
He was president at the time?
No, he wasn't president at the time, but I will share this. My mother, who was a college student at the University of Missouri, went home at Christmas time, and she picked up the phone and called the Truman office, which later they built the Truman Library around where his office was. And it was about 6:30 in the morning, and Harry Truman answered the phone. And she said, "Yes, I'm a college student at Mizzou, and I wanted to know if my friend and I could come down there and meet you." He said, "Well, come on down." And so they got ready as quick as they could. By the time they were able to get there, it was about 10 minutes till 8, and the secretary was there by then. And my mom and her friend walked up and said, "We're here to see the president." This was in 1946. And the secretary went, "Oh, really?" And you heard from the other room, "It's okay, Rose, let him in."
Oh my God.
And so they walked in, and Harry Truman
signed
that. And you could see the date on there, December 25th, 1946.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the
Oh, my
president
God.
then.
Ken, you were destined for this, brother. I mean, from the beginning.
And so then in 1972, I'm visiting my grandparents in Independence. And on December 26, 1972, Harry Truman passed away. So they shut down the whole town. You couldn't get out.
Wow.
And so dignitaries were coming in, and I actually, as a 4-year-old, attended Harry Truman's funeral and have memories of that. I can remember the casket, the flag draped casket, lying in state there in the Truman Library. I remember walking from my parents' home to the front of where the Truman House was and seeing a big stage, and there was Lyndon Johnson, there was Richard Nixon up on that stage. And so that was my exposure to it from an early age. So my interest was always there.
Wow. That is crazy. That is crazy. I mean, I don't know very many people that kind of thing has happened. That's why I say you're destined for this. You had to be destined for this.
Well, and then I mentioned Jackson, and in Jackson, I was infamous for this one event because I wrote to the president, and he actually wrote me back. And I got a letter, and I was in the paper, a little kid holding this letter. And
Truman?
No, this was Gerald Ford was president.
Gerald Ford. Okay.
And he would go on to write me back 2 other times. And the last 2 letters, he actually signed Jerry Ford, which was very, informal, which I thought was really cool. But when I was 9 years old, Jimmy Carter was the president. And I thought, I've written, why don't I try calling? So why is that a thing? And I'll just give you a hint in the book.
Like on the phone, calling on the phone.
Like pick up the phone and call the
president.
Let
me see if you're 9 years old and you're thinking, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call the president.
So I had to find what the number was.
Yeah.
It's 202-456-1414. I still remember it to this day.
Is that the same number still today?
That is the phone number for the White House today.
Wow.
And so I tried calling him. Didn't get him. I tried calling him again. So why do I mention this? All happened in the course of about 2 weeks, because when your parents get a phone call from your elementary school wanting to know why there are long distance charges to the White House, not a great day. When your church calls and goes, we have some long distance charges to the White House, bad day. And then when Dad finally got his bill from my house, 9-year-old couldn't sit down for a while.
Oh my.
For a long time after that, I was like, oh, you're the one who tried to call the president. Oh yeah, this is the one. This is the kid that tried to do that. And so, yes, I tried to call the presidents, but for years, and it was funny because I'm over 50 now. When I went back to Jackson, my sister still lives there. When I went back to Jackson, I guess about 3 years ago, somebody brought it up to me. I'm over 50. And they still bring it up, which is a JFK saying that success has 1,000 orphans, but failure it has many children. So people tend to remember your failures far long after they'll remember any successes that you have, because nobody remembered me getting a letter from the president. They just remembered me trying to call him. But I guess the funny part of it was, for me, was I wanted to know why. Why did I call the president? And I finally came to the conclusion that if the president said something to me, it would be incredibly important, earth-shattering, life-changing.
Yeah.
And this started the journey for me of wanting to know, what would they have said to me? Because obviously the majority of them have passed away. What would they have said?
Right.
So I started learning about them. I started reading history books, but ultimately, the ultimate was to go to where they were. And somehow, when you're there, now I'm not speaking metaphysically or anything, but somehow you just hear their voices a little clearer when you're where they are. So I've been at Sagamore Hill in Oyster Bay, New York, to the house of Theodore Roosevelt. And you see videos of him on that same front porch where I'm standing, beating these railings and thundering his message. You're connected a little bit more.
Oh, I can see
you go to those places. Yeah, absolutely. And then
that energy still rolls out there. That energy still rolls out there.
And I get chills right now as I say this. Pardon me. As I say this, you stand in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and see the chair there. The chair is there, the Rising Sun chair where George Washington actually sat. And no, John Adams was right here. James Madison was here. Thomas Jefferson was sitting over here. These men absolutely shaped a country, and to be right where they are, yeah, they're dead, but they're still speaking.
Right.
They're still, their speeches are still there. Their writings, that the letters that they wrote, all of those things are still there. And that is what started this. And it all came down to one question. I'm an extremely curious person. I always have been. You mentioned the illusions. That's how I got into it. I just wanted to know, how does it work? And it just took hold, and I began doing them. But for the presidents, I wanted to know, why is it that when I say Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, everybody goes, oh yeah, Lincoln, I know who these people. Oh yeah, I know them. But if I say Harrison, Pierce, Buchanan, who? Nobody knows who these people are. But they held the same exact position. At one point, the American people thought enough of those men to elect them to the highest office in America, and today they are completely forgotten. Why are some leaders remembered and others completely forgotten? And that's what's answered in this course.
And I really want to get into a little bit of that, because I think thus, okay, so let me get back to this, make sure our audience really understands why the title of the book is the way it is because you actually called the president on the phone to get him.
I tried to call a president, but then after that, it started a lifelong pursuit of calling on every single president.
I love it.
So every birthplace, every library, museum, gravesite, I've gone to every one of them. It took me the better part of 12 years to do all of them. And in the course of me being a keynote speaker and traveling from this state to this state, if I knew I was going to be near a site, I would fly in a day early or stay a day later, get a rental car, pay for my hotel room, and I'd just go. And every one of these sites represents an entire day. And I am that guy that goes through the library and sits there and reads every single thing, watches every video, because I'm looking for that golden leadership nugget from that person. And every one of them have it. Some good, some not so good. But in my opinion, you can learn just as much, if not more, from the bad ones as you can the good ones. It was Jim Rohn, who I'm sure you're familiar with. Jim Rohn, who said, find somebody who really made a mess of their life and sit down with them. That's great information.
It really is. That's beautiful.
Well, that's what I did with the presidents.
That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. I thought that was so intriguing of why you wrote the book, the title of the book the way you did. But Ken, we're actually going to get into something here, because we're going to talk about some presidents, but we're going to do this little challenge, okay? And it's going to take us through this section, a little bit of this section, probably into the next session. We got plenty of time to talk about these, okay? So what I'm going to do, Ken, is I'm going to come up with, we have 47 presidents, right?
47 terms, 45 men, but yeah.
Okay, 47 terms, 45 men. Okay, so on your expertise, I'm just gonna lay it on your expertise here. I'm gonna pick a number, whatever that number is, and we only discussed one, maybe two numbers when we were talking before in our discovery call, and I think we talked about number 16, which we really want to get into that, and so, but yeah, it is a good one. But I'm going to call out some numbers, and I just want you to tell me a little bit about that president and the leadership lesson that you've learned or that you can share with us about that particular presidency or that particular president. Can you do that?
All right.
Are you ready for the challenge, buddy? Brother?
Rock and roll. Let's do it.
I love it. Okay. Number one. Okay. And I'm gonna go with this one because I love this guy, and we already talked a little bit about him, but not a lot. Number 33. Number 33.
Well, number 33 is that guy right there.
That's right.
That is Harry S. Truman.
That's right.
Yeah. Truman, the thing that's so extraordinary about Harry S. Truman is, well, it's several things about him. He was something interesting about him that people don't know. He signed that, Harry S. Truman. In the day and age where he lived, it was common for the mother's parents, whatever their names were, to be the middle name of the son. Well, his mother had grandfather Solomon and grandfather Shippe, Shippe. Those were the two grandparents. Well, Truman's parents couldn't agree. Solomon, Shippe. So they couldn't agree over the name. And so they decided on nothing. The S in Harry Truman stands for nothing. It's an initial.
Is that right?
Nothing.
Just an S?
It's just an S. So most people don't know that.
No.
He's also the only president of the 20th century who did not die a millionaire. He refused to get paid huge sums of money to go on the speaking circuit because he said, they don't want me, they want the office of the president, and that's not for sale. So a very integrous president, but he had to make more difficult decisions than any other president I know of in history in a short amount of time. He inherited a mess of a war from Franklin D. Roosevelt. Germany was almost beaten, but they weren't yet. And Truman walks into this. He knows nothing about the Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb. He knows nothing about the plan, strategies. He's been kept out of it. And in just a short time, I'm talking 30 days, he's got to go bang, 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 bang through all of these, make some hard choices that end World War II, most notably dropping the atomic bomb, which he did because he said, I'm going to save more lives by doing this than allowing the war to continue and millions to be dead on both sides. Truman's favorite saying was, the buck stops here.
Right.
Which that comes from when they were playing poker in the West, whoever was the dealer would have the buck knife. And so if you didn't want to deal, you would take the buck knife and pass it. Meant you didn't want to do it. But wherever the dealer was, the buck stopped with them.
Wow.
So that's where Truman got the saying from. It was a popular saying then. Most people don't know on the back of that sign, the buck stops here, it said, I'm from Missouri on the back of it. That means Missouri is the show me state. My mother used to say this all the time. I'm from Missouri on that. Nah, I'm from Missouri on that. That means, I don't know if I agree with that. You're going to have to show me that before I'm going to believe it. And that's what faced Truman the whole time. A leader knows that you are the one who's going to make the decision, but before you make a decision, you need to have verifiable proof. That's the leadership lesson from Harry S. Truman.
Wow. Verifiable truth. That's beautiful. My gosh. Well, Ken, we got several more we're going to go through, okay? But we're going to have to take a quick break, right?
Sounds great.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to take a quick back. When we return, we're going to get back into some of the numbers, the presidents. I'm going to choose some numbers, and Ken's going to tell us all about them. We'll be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hi, I'm Steve Steele, and I am a speaker, coach, and facilitator for the John Maxwell Leadership. And what I'm going to present to you today is the 5 focal foundations of communication. So let's talk about the paralanguage foundation gap that exists.
You're going to be involved in helping to identify the tools that you want to use or need to use in your business.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele, your host, with our special guest today, Ken Hartley. And Ken, we just finished talking a little bit about the 33rd president, Harry S. Truman. And you said that S doesn't stand for anything. It was just like, it's just an initial. And the hardest decision, one of the hardest decisions he had to make was the buck stops here on the atomic bomb. That decision there, I can't imagine trying to make that decision. I've often thought that over my lifetime of how hard and difficult that decision must have been, because it's impacted us from that point on all the way to now, and it will never ever change. That decision has impacted us.
He was interviewed about that when he was in his 80s by a guy named Merle Miller, and that's a book called Plain Speaking Harry Truman. So if you really want Truman in his very raw and real form, you can get that. And Merle Miller just had a little cassette tape recorder and was recording him and then transcribed a lot of it. But he was asked, do you ever have any doubts about that? And he replied, not for a minute. He said there were 2 reasons why. He said, Number one, in war, people die. And I was determined if someone's going to die, it was going to be the enemy and not our boys. And number two, he said, when I talked to the advisors, I calculated the cost of life of invading Japan, and it would have cost more than 1 million lives on both sides. So it was just a no-brainer.
Was he convinced if he invaded Japan that was the only way we were going to win the war before he knew about the atomic bomb?
He knew Japan and their culture of honor, and you had the kamikaze pilots, all of this they would die for it.
Yeah,
he knew he had to break their resolve, and that's what it was for. And another little side note, it is in a letter that FDR wrote to his son James in 1945. Where he was worried about Japan. He knew Germany was winding down, but he was telling his dad, going to Japan, I just am concerned about it. And his dad told him then, we have something here. I can't talk about it, but we will never invade Japan. So Truman merely continued the decision that Roosevelt was going to make anyway.
Wow. That's powerful.
So some people question, would FDR have done it? And the answer is a resounding yes. And there's verifiable proof of that.
And Truman knew that. Truman knew that.
No, he didn't know it. He did not know that until later years. Because again, FDR had little to no contact with Truman. FDR, bit of a big ego there, and he just wanted to leave Truman outside. The only reason that Harry Truman was even vice president was because Henry Wallace at that time was considered to be too liberal of a candidate. And FDR was known for the social programs and liberals, so he wanted to bring in a Missouri, somewhat conservative guy to balance out the ticket and pull votes from the South. That was the whole idea of it. And so no one ever dreamed that Harry Truman would become the president. He was called ignorant, uneducated. He only had an 8th grade education. However, only an 8th grade education. He never finished school. But the man read. Voracious reader. He would read biographies of famous men. He would read the Bible through every year, cover to cover. And that ended up becoming another one of his most controversial decisions when all of his advisors, including George C. Marshall, who Truman called the greatest American he's ever known, looked at him, and Israel was about to become a nation. And they were forming all of that. And George C. Marshall said, don't you touch this. Don't you recognize them. It'll be a huge mistake. If you do this, I will personally vote against you in the next election. And what most people don't know is in the 1920s, after he returned from World War I, his best friend was a guy named Eddie Jacobson. And they ran a haberdashery store in downtown Independence. It's men's clothing in Kansas City, rather. It was a men's clothing store. And it went under, but they remained friends. Eddie Jacobson was Jewish. And so Jacobson called up Truman in 1948 and said, I'd like to come by your office. And he said, now, Eddie, you can come by my office, but if you want to talk about this Middle East business, I'm going to throw you out. Don't you come mention it to me, as only Truman could do. And Jacobson showed up at the White House. Truman walked in, and there was Eddie Jacobson, his friend, with tears coming down his face. And he said some bad words, and he said, Eddie, I told you, I can't stand to see you cry. Why are you doing this to me? And Jacobson looked at him and said, Mr. President, didn't call him Harry, said, Mr. President, I feel like this is the pivotal moment of why you're in this office. I think all the decisions he'd already made. He said, this is the pivotal moment. Israel was recognized as a nation less than 30 minutes after they took power. 1948 Harry Truman recognized them, first nation to do it. Short amount of time. He did take hits for doing that. But 1 year later, the chief rabbi from Israel showed up, presented him with the Torah, beautiful Torah. It's in the Truman Library. You can see it. And said, Mr. President, I believe it was for this reason that you were born. And when he said that to Harry Truman, it was his turn. Tears came down his face.
Wow. That's a beautiful story, Ken. I had no clue. I mean, it's amazing what took place behind the scenes of all this.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for number 33. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back in time. We're going to go. How about number 8?
Number 8. Oh, wow. Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren.
Yeah.
He was raised in a tavern in Kinderhook, New York. Rural area. His father owned that tavern, and young Martin would go there and listen to stories that the tavern people would tell. And it was a veritable masterclass in understanding people. He knew how people communicated, how they got along. He listened to stories. He learned the power of stories, how they influence. And so he learned that from a young age, but he was also a brilliant strategist. And so you fast forward into the 1830s, and you've got John Quincy Adams running to be the president of the United States against Andrew Jackson, among others. And Henry Clay is another candidate there. Well, nobody knows for sure what happened, but Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams had a little meeting because the election was locked up. It went to the House of Representatives, and all we know is afterwards, suddenly all of Henry Clay's supporters were supporting John Quincy Adams, and Henry Clay miraculously became the Secretary of State.
Wow.
And Jackson was left out. Jackson was furious. He had a terrible temper. He said, politics doesn't work. And at that point, Martin Van Buren, who had achieved great success in New York, approached him and said, look, you were the hero, the war hero, the Battle of New Orleans, the War of 1812. You're the war hero. You be the face. Let me do everything behind the scenes, which he did. That is how we got Andrew Jackson as a president, because of the strategy. Now, when Jackson tried to run for office, they looked at him and said, you, sir, are a complete jackass. He took that as a compliment. So much so that when he and Martin Van Buren said, forget all this politics stuff, we're going to form our own party. We're going to call it the Democratic Party, and that's going to be our mascot.
You're kidding.
And it still is today. That's the donkey. That's where you get it from.
Oh, my God.
So Van Buren became Jackson's Secretary of State. In the second term, he was the vice president. He had achieved so much success, people started looking at him and going, hey, it's old Kinderhook. Old Kinderhook. He's such a good guy. Well, Van Buren loved that. He thought, wow, I'm doing a pretty good job. He loved it so much, he started signing paperwork, old Kinderhook, old Kinderhook, old Kinderhook. But when you're signing a stack of papers, it gets to be a little too much. So he started abbreviating it. Well, that went to Andrew Jackson's desk, and Jackson had no clue what it meant. Now, another thing about Van Buren, he's the only president whose first language was not English. It was actually Dutch. And Dutch is still spoken in Kinderhook, New York today. So Jackson figured this was some kind of Dutch thing that he didn't know what it was. Maybe meaning all correct. He didn't know. So he started using it. A Boston newspaper picked it up to make fun of them and started using the abbreviation. And today, Old Kinderhook, or OK, is the most common used phrase in the world. You can thank Martin Van Buren.
Wow. That's amazing. That's beautiful. Let's jump to another one real quick.
Yeah.
Let's go. And I know this is a powerful one, and I want to talk about, I definitely want to get this in because I don't, time is always an issue on the Leader's Edge. We get so wrapped up and things move so quickly, but I do want to talk about number 16.
Yeah. Well, that's the guy. If you look at American history, you can divide it up into the founding fathers. You can divide it up into this slide where America has to deal with the issue that nobody wants to talk about, which is slavery. And then you have Reconstruction. But the axis point, the pinwheel, is a president in a category all his own, and that's number 16, Abraham Lincoln. And all of American history turns on this president. He is somebody who goes through a metamorphosis. Now, interesting thing, in 1846, Martin Van Buren, the guy you were just talking about, is passing through Rochester, Illinois. Terrible rainstorm. It dooms him to stay overnight in Rochester, but everybody knows what a great storyteller he is. So they said, we want to hear your stories, and we want to bring our own storyteller because we think this guy has amazing stories as well. So they go to a tavern, have a few drinks. Martin Van Buren starts sharing his stories. Their storyteller shows up, starts telling his stories. One tops the other. And Martin Van Buren would later say that it was the most enjoyable night he ever remembered spending talking with somebody else. Although the young man's politics were askew. Martin Van Buren was, of course, a Democrat. The young man he was talking to at that time was a Whig, and his name was Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
So he ended up, it's funny, again, how these threads go together, and they end up knowing each other.
Now, was Van Buren old at that point? Because he was
Yes.
the 8th president, so he would have been relatively old, and I would assume Lincoln would have been younger.
Very young. He was just a lawyer at that point.
Yeah.
And he had not yet run for Congress. That wouldn't come until later that year. And so another interesting fact here is John Quincy Adams was the president who was appointed minister to the Netherlands by George Washington in 1794 in his 20s. He could speak 8 different languages. Brilliant man.
Wow.
In 1848, John Quincy Adams is the only president to serve as a congressman after he's the president. He's on the floor of the House, and he has a massive stroke.
Mm-hmm.
They pick him up, they carry him out. One of the people who picked him up and carried him out was a freshman congressman from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln, making John Quincy Adams the only president we know that knew both Washington and Lincoln.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's
those two were
amazing.
weaved together. And Lincoln ended up serving on the funeral committee for John Quincy Adams when he died a couple of days later in the Capitol building. Yeah. But Lincoln, if you read some of his writings at the very beginning, they're not good. I don't mean just bad writing. He was always a brilliant storyteller, but his views were very much racist. There's no other way to put that. And when he inherited the mess that he inherited from James Buchanan, Buchanan looked at him at the inauguration on the way to, I should say, in the carriage and said, if you are as happy in attaining this office as I am in leaving it, then you are a happy man indeed. And Lincoln won with 41% of the vote. That's all he got, 41% of the popular vote. It's one of the lowest.
Yeah.
And so he walks in and says, look, if keeping slavery means uniting the country, I'll keep it. If getting rid of it means uniting the country, whatever. He just wanted to keep the country together. And it wasn't until later on, and we don't know for sure what it was. I personally think it had to do with the Battle of Antietam in 1862, which was the bloodiest day in American history. Over 23,000 Americans died that day. More than 9/11, D-Day.
Greater than Gettysburg.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
In one day, the bloodiest day. But that was also the first battle that was actually photographed. And so some of those pictures came back to Lincoln. And something inside him snapped where he said, this is no longer about uniting us. We're never going to be united unless we eradicate the evil of slavery.
Wow.
And that's how we got the great emancipator. And Lincoln's leadership strength was that he constantly surrounded himself with people who weren't like him, who didn't think like him, agree with him. He pulled political opponents in who had criticized him openly, had run against him for office. Come to my cabinet. And he would sit there while they had conversations and just listen, because he was getting unique perspectives. But the leadership strength of this man is not only did he listen to opposing sides, he questioned his own beliefs. So much so that he went, maybe I was wrong. And he morphed into something else. And a leader that knows everything can never grow, they'll never influence, and they can never lead. And we know from John Maxwell, leadership is influence.
That's right. Absolutely.
But you can't build influence if you're not growing.
That's right. That's right. Lincoln also probably had some of the most adversarial situations take place in his life. Adversary set him, he lost family members. I think he lost a son, 2 of them or something like that.
He had 3 sons and 2 of them died. One of them while he was president.
Okay. Yeah. And then, so talk about a few of his struggles while he was going through this whole crazy thing of the Civil War and all the pressures and stress that had. Plus he had family stressors as well.
He did. Mary, his wife, was extremely vocal. And one of the first ladies to be so much so. She was really out there, and that was not well received by some people. Lincoln, I would say it's not even close, was the most harshly criticized president of any of them. And like I said, it's not even close. I know people talk about, we look at the modern day politics and go, oh, they're so critical. It doesn't hold a candle to what Lincoln endured. And he had people from, of course, the South hated him. Majority of the South hated him. But then there were people in the North, too, that did. For instance, you have a Franklin Pierce, who was the 14th president, openly critical of him. Millard Fillmore, 13th president, openly critical. James Buchanan openly supported slavery. He's from Pennsylvania, a Northerner. They were known as dough faces. That was the derogatory name for somebody in the North who supported slavery. And so he was getting criticized from all sides constantly, but he kept going back to what he thought was the right thing to do. And there's a book. Matter of fact, I'm going to grab it. 1 second. It's right here. It's this book. It's called Reminiscences of Abraham Lincoln. This was written. This is an original copy, by the way. It took me a long time to get this. It was published in 1885, so about 20 years after Lincoln died. And this is firsthand accounts of people who were in the room with Lincoln. But this particular entry from John Alley, the congressman from Massachusetts, he's in there, and they're talking about, at this point, Lincoln is committed to get the 13th Amendment passed. Now, the original 13th Amendment tried to be passed by James Buchanan, was going to make slavery legal in all the states. It was defeated. So the 13th Amendment we know today was proposed by Lincoln, but when it came to a vote, they were counting the votes and they were 2 votes short.
Wow.
2 votes.
2 votes short.
So here's what it says here. And John Alley's in this room. He says, Mr. Lincoln said those votes must be procured. 2 members of the House were sent for, and Mr. Lincoln said those 2 votes must be procured. When asked how, he remarked, I am the President of the United States, clothed with great power. The abolition of slavery by constitutional provision, now listen to this, settles the fate for all coming time, not only of the millions now in bondage, but of the unborn millions to come. Wow. A measure of such importance that these 2 votes must be procured. I leave it to you how it shall be done, but remember, I am the President of the United States, clothed with immense power, and I expect you to procure these votes.
That is command, man. That is command. Wow. Really
Amazing. So that was his resolve. And he did get the votes. He did get the 13th Amendment passed. He did end up finding the right general, which was a whole nother process. He had the wrong men in leadership, and there's a ton of leadership lessons which are in the book about this particular aspect of, leaders find the right person, but if they have the wrong person, they change the seats. Absolutely. And he was constantly doing it. And he ended up finding his general. People thought it was McClellan, Sherman. No, his general was a guy named Ulysses S. Grant. And he had won these startling victories in Tennessee, then all the way down into deep Mississippi, into Vicksburg. And Lincoln said, that's my man. Till the end of the war, that's my man right there.
Wow.
And made him commander over all of the Union Army. And after Grant became commander of the Union Army, Robert E. Lee did not win one more battle.
Right. Wow. This is crazy. I mean, I'm fascinated by all of this stuff, but we're going to have to take another break, Ken. So when we get back, we're going to talk about one of my favorite presidents, number 35.
Okay. Sounds great.
Number 35.
He's a good one.
So, yeah, absolutely. So we'll be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Are you ready to elevate your organization with a team of transformational leaders? Do you want to attract and nurture top talent while enhancing communication and productivity across generations? Hi, I'm Steve Steele, co-host of The Leader's Edge, and your coach with the Maxwell Leadership Team. My program equips leaders with essential skills and resources to lead, coach, and communicate effectively, ensuring everyone thrives. With tailored insights and proven strategies, I'm here to help your entire organization succeed. So reach out today at growthinleadership@gmail.com or visit johncmaxwellgroup.com/Steve Steele.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I am Steve Steele, your host, with our special guest today, Ken Hartley. Ken, what amazing morning it's been. This has just been so phenomenal to me. I just enjoyed it so much. And we just finished talking up a little bit about number 16, Abraham Lincoln. But I do want to touch on one more thing about Lincoln before we jump into 35.
Okay.
Of course, we all know that Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater. What did that actually do to the country when that happened?
Well, there was so much going on that night of April 14th, 1865. While most people know, okay, Lincoln was killed by John Wilkes Booth, they don't know that George Atzerodt was there in a bar on the way to the Kirkland House to kill Andrew Johnson as well. And Secretary Seward was viciously attacked that night. It was not just one, it was a conspiracy to knock off the entire federal government. And it was seen as revenge. Another thing most people don't know is if you can find you look on YouTube, it's actually in the course that I have as well, at Lincoln's inauguration on March the 4th, 1865, you see him there speaking. But if you look up over his shoulder on the Capitol steps right up here is John Wilkes Booth.
Wow.
He's there. And he wrote in his diary, he thought about killing him that day. So the purpose of it was to disrupt the federal government. And I think this is where the genius of the founding fathers comes into play, because the government has been, and in my opinion, always will be, bigger than one person.
Yeah.
So much so that it can survive something as catastrophic as losing a leader like Lincoln. And Andrew Johnson, of course, was not nearly the leader Abraham Lincoln was. In fact, he was the exact opposite in most of his ways. But the idea was to cut off the head and the whole body would fall apart. And it didn't happen that way at all. No. The country was strong.
Yeah, and I think throughout history we've seen that happen. You know, it tried to cut off the head, but it didn't happen. The country still kept moving forward no matter what. We have such a resilient country. It's just amazing.
Which is an unfortunate but a decent segue to our next one that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Let's talk about number 35. I was a child when Kennedy actually got into office, and I want you to talk a little bit about him. I know that he was also a war hero as well.
He was,
and I know that he had really struggled with back pain, tremendous. I think he got injured. So talk to us a little about Ken.
Most people don't know that he suffered from Addison's disease. It was chronic all of his life. Also, a lot of people don't know he actually received the last rites 5 different times in his life. Catholic. So,
no way. I did not know that.
Yeah. 5 different times they thought he was going to die from various things, as an infant, and then as a teenager, as an adult, as an adult before he was a congressman, and then while he was a congressman, he was overseas and caught something over there and almost died from that. And then of course the 5th one was in Dallas. But in 1943, he is aboard the patrol torpedo boat 109, PT 109, and it's the Japanese cruiser Amagari was the name of it, that plowed into their boat and just split it in half. It killed one of them, and of course they're in the waters. And it was Kennedy who, when everybody else was losing their head, stayed calm, and then get a hold of this, for 5 hours, he led those men through those waters in the dark to get them to safety.
And I know
one man, he had a life jacket that strapped around him, so he had his, and he was swimming with that man strapped to him.
Wow. And I knew that there's lots of coral issues and all kinds of things when they were trying to get to land, and there's a lot of, it was an unbearing task to do that, and it showed the courage of who Kennedy really was.
Yeah, and of course, he ended up writing a book, Profiles in Courage, the first person in Profiles in Courage, which I read. I highly recommend that book for anybody who wants to study history. But the first chapter of his book is another Massachusetts guy, John Quincy Adams. That's the first one that he wrote about. He would get the Pulitzer Prize for that book. But the thing with Kennedy is he would keep his head cool during times of great crisis, which is so necessary for a leader. When everybody else is losing their mind, a leader keeps theirs. A leader says, now let's just be calm. Let's just think about this. One of the things to think about, a good example of this was, somebody that I know you and I both know hold near and dear to our heart, Dr. John C. Maxwell, who, when COVID hit, he did a series of teachings in a studio that just brought such calm and clarity in the middle of uncertainty. Well, this is the leadership strength that we see in Kennedy, and this is going to show up later at one of the most critical times in history, which is the Bay of Pigs.
Bay of Pigs.
Yeah. Nobody knows what's happening at this point, and you've got one set of people. There's all these nuclear, if you don't know it, long story very short, Russia via Cuba parked a bunch of nuclear weapons 90 miles off the coast of Florida, with their finger on the button, saying we can fire this anytime they want to. And Cuba already had a bad taste in their mouth because of the Bay of Pigs invasion, which there was just so many things that went wrong there. It gave Kennedy a black eye coming into office. And now you've got these missiles parked, and everybody is saying, strike Cuba, strike them, blow them up, knock them out. We can deal with the fallout. Kennedy puts a battleship out there as a blockade to keep Russia from bringing more to Cuba. And he calls a bluff.
Huge bluff.
And everybody's going, it's October 14th when they photographed those missile silos down there. And they're urging Kennedy to attack. And unbeknownst, he sent his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, to speak to the representative from Russia. And they come back and they strike a deal that Russia will remove the missiles from Cuba. And it wasn't officially announced, but it is the case that America would remove their missiles from Turkey. And that was the balance. Because of that, they found a diplomatic solution. So when all of them were just yelling, screaming, and the way they described that room was almost chaotic, Kennedy just sat there. This is the same man who had a calm head in World War II, and he still had it here. And that literally saved us from a nuclear holocaust.
Oh, it's crazy. That's crazy. Well, we don't... We're going to run out of time here. I could talk all day about this, Ken, but I do know that we have Kennedy was fascinating to me as a little boy. I grew up with him as president, and then witnessed his assassination as a boy, and it was just it still plays on me today. I know it devastated the country, and it was very, very difficult. And it's still alive today. We still talk about it all. I live here in Dallas, and every time people come see me, they want to go up to Dallas, and it's just it's a lot of crazy stuff. But
I did the warehouse. I toured the whole thing.
Yeah, me too. I
read all of that, and it's fascinating to look at, to walk around the grassy knoll, to kind of get a feel of the geography that's there. And this was 2 years ago. There was a poll done, and to this day, 68% of Americans still don't believe the Warren Commission report.
Oh yeah, I have to be very honest. I'm not sure I do, but it's just me. That's just me.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't. But and I remember going out there and actually standing on the X marks the spot there on the road and looking up at the sixth floor and going, my God, I as a child I saw this, So it's like crazy. Well,
now, as a side note, something interesting about Kennedy. A side note.
Yeah.
Right before they did the blockade and they said that they're going to ban all Cuban imports.
Yeah.
Right before that, JFK had 1,200 Cuban cigars sent to the White House. True.
Oh, really? Wow. Crazy. Well, Ken, we've talked a few times about your book and we've actually got a teaching module to it today. We're going to review that. And so afterwards, I want to have our producer cue it up and set it off. And after we get done watching, it's about 2 minutes long. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If I said the names to you, Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, chances are you go, oh yeah, I know exactly who they are. But what if I said the names Chester Arthur, Franklin Pierce, Martin Van Buren? Who? Hi, my name is Ken Hartley, and I'm a keynote speaker, leadership expert, and the author of Calling the Presidents. I help people build belief in themselves because what derails leaders more than anything else is not what they know about leadership, communication, or personal growth, but what they believe about it. My interest in presidents started very early. Where other kids wanted to be police officers, firemen, superheroes, I wanted to be the president. So much so that I actually wrote to the president and then thought, why stop there? I actually tried to call the president. What would they say? What would their advice be for me? To this day, I've never carried on a conversation with the president, never talked on the phone, never spoken personally. However, even though most of these presidents have passed away, they're very much still speaking. In this course, you're going to get deeper insights into leadership, information you won't find just by reading the book. Every single one of these presidents held the highest office in the United States. Why is it that some are remembered in perpetuity while others are completely forgotten? That's the question that I answer here. We have to realize there is something to learn from each and every president. Sometimes there's just as much to learn from the ones we don't care for as there is from the ones we really adore. When I go through their letters, their speeches, their libraries, their homes, their museums, their grave sites, and I've been to every single one, history is screaming at us. The only question is, are we listening? I'm Ken Hartley, and welcome to Calling the Presidents.
Wow. That, and I understand, Ken, that's a premiere. We're the first.
You were the first one. You're the first one to see that. It doesn't
Wow.
even drop on social media until tomorrow.
Oh, wow. That was beautifully done, Ken. Beautifully done.
The wonderful people at Leader Pass, who
Yes.
also have worked with John Maxwell and Chick-fil-A, among others. They're
Uh-huh.
the best. They're so good. Highly recommend them.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful job. So tell us a little bit about this. I mean, so you have a video modules teaching on your book, Calling the President. So tell us a little bit about it.
The book is a standalone. You get the book, you have a ton of things. But when I originally wrote this book, Steve, it was 500 pages.
Okay.
So it was a book that
I remember you showed me the transcript to it. It's like this thick.
Yeah, it's a Los Angeles phone book. Nobody would read this thing. And so I had to truncate it, but there were extra interesting facts. There are extra leadership lessons for each one of those. And so the material in the course is not a rehash of the book. It's actually 95% new, not in the book. And then it comes with downloadable workbooks, and it is specifically focused on leadership. For each one of them, I dive into a leadership strength and then give you something to think about in your own leadership journey. So
wow, absolutely beautiful. Wow, Ken, it's amazing. I mean, and I recommend everybody get this. I mean, get the book. I'm going to go out and purchase. But where can you get the book at, Ken? Where can you get the book at?
You can get it at callingthepresidents.com. Callingthepresidents.com, or you can go to my website, kenhartley.com, and there'll be a little thing scrolling at the top to get the book there. Click there. Either way, you can get that. And then for those that do go get the course, it also has a free preview. So if you want to view some of the modules yourself,
right,
I think it gives you a preview of 4 of them. And Lincoln is one of the ones. However, I will tell you, Lincoln actually has 5 videos all to himself.
Is that right? I can't wait. Beautiful. Ken, thank you so much for today. What an amazing journey we had today. Ken, I got to have you back, okay? I just want to
love it.
We're going to talk when you get back because we got more presidents to talk about. I mean, I have so many questions now. So we're going to get you back. Just amazing. So thank you so much for being here on the Leader's Edge. I want to take in next week on the Leader's Edge features Michael Humphrey. Now, Michael is a leadership coach, a U.S. Marine Corps warrant officer with over 20 years of experience. He specializes in helping leaders navigate transition and improve team performance. And just as a reminder, you can find the Leader's Edge on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you find value in these conversations, hit the subscribe button and follow and stay connected. I want to thank all of you, all of our listeners, our amazing friends, because without you, the Leader's Edge would not be possible. I'm so grateful to have you here and so excited to connect with you next. So bye, everyone. See you later.